I assume so.
Call our meeting to order at 6:30. Could we have a roll call, please?
Catherine Patino,
Here.
David Florio,
Here.
Luke Murray,
Here.
James Pearson,
Here.
Craig Levis,
Here.
Don Coward.
Here.
And could I have a vote to go into executive session, please?
Madam Chair, I make a vote,
Motion,
I
sorry.
make a motion to go into executive session.
I second the motion.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Catherine Patino,
Yes.
David Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
All right, we'll be back and we have an executive session. But we'll- Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Hello. I thought it was on. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the open session of the Coventry School Committee. I have 7:04. And if we could all stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could remain standing for a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Levis, if you could notify the public of the emergency exits, please.
Sure. In case of emergency, there are exits behind you to your left and to your right. Please exit through those doors and you can go out to the parking area.
Thank you. And Mr. Murray, would you do the honor and read the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools?
Sure. The mission of Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an inclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you. And just for the public's knowledge, the school committee met for about a half hour before this meeting in executive session. There was a vote taken for to approve our executive session minutes. The vote was unanimous, 4-0. And we also discussed and reviewed the school safety plans. That being said, is there a motion to seal the minutes of executive session, please?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to put that the records of the executive session be kept closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to approval of our open meeting minutes from 10:14. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 14, 2021 as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to the public agenda for the citizens gathered. Any agenda items from here on are open for public discussion. If a motion or a vote is going to be taken on a particular item, you will have the ability to speak about that particular issue before I call for the vote. That being said, our next agenda item is the celebration of the Coventry Middle School Boy and Girls Cross Country Team. Mr. Levis.
I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to ask Coach Grace Gregory, if you don't mind coming up. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I think the best part of our meeting is recognize that you're the reason why we do what we do. And again, I want to thank the parents for coming. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for supporting this work and this effort and kids. And I know myself, if it wasn't for folks in my life, I'm not where I am today. That's what you do. And, what we're going to do is, if you don't mind, we're going to, those of you that are here, we're going to call you one at a time and actually come up and give you a certificate. And then if you don't mind, kind of line it up here and then we'll open it up afterwards. So the school committee will want to say a few things to you. I'm sure parents will take pictures, and I'm sure some of the parents might want to have a few comments. So, right? So it's your night now for student athletes. So up to now.
No, you guys, all the way down.
You're going to be staying here for a little while. 8 and out.
Love these shirts. Look at these sweatshirts. They're really cool.
Cynthia Russo. Blake Landry. Hey, Blake. Eileen Peterson. Hey, Eileen. Marlene Salvo. Eric Silva. Emma Silva. Jacob Silva. Mariah Smith. Zoe Thorpe. Stephen Thomas. Emma Wheeler. So you guys won with the boys and girls division champions, is that correct?
Woo-hoo. Woo.
I understand that both teams came in seventh in the entire state, so congratulations. for that.
Woo-hoo.
I don't know if you guys would mind, if you guys mind turning around, so you can face the committee and maybe ask some questions, and then we'll let the parents.
Wow. Okay, sorry. I'm so glad you turned around. I was going to ask that same request. So I'm going to allow my school committee members to comment. And so I'll start with Mr. Pearson.
I just want to say congratulations. Great job, all of you. I believe it or not, based on my size, I ran cross country in junior high and it was a great experience. So proud of all of you for your achievement here. Great job. That's all.
And Mr. Murray.
Yeah, so I'll second that. Great job. I hope you stick with it in the high school. Cross country is a great activity. If nothing else, it's going to keep you in shape. And you guys can continue to compete and keep working your way up. So congratulations. Stick with it.
Mr. Florio.
Great work. We are so proud of you, all of you. I really do hope you continue this in the high school, and you should do very well. Are you guys related to James Alves? Yeah? I used to work for Mr. Alves. He's the vice principal. Am I correct? Yes, he's one of the best guys I know, and I'm sure he'll continue working with you guys.
Is he in the audience? Is he over there somewhere?
Yeah, there he is. I see him. He's with Mr. Lucian.
Ah.
Hi, Mr. Alves. How you doing? You raised great kids. Okay, and I see Mariah here, and I tell you, you're all very special, and you're all great kids. Thank you very much. You made your town proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. And my final congratulations as well. We couldn't be more proud of you. It's a lot of work, but I think also it's a lot of fun. I would think. I never ran cross country, but raise your hand if you had fun. Raise your hand if you're a second timer. Woo-hoo! And I don't know what grades you are in the middle school. So how many have you done this? How many is this the first time you've been on this team? Wow,
Wow.
great. And how many have been on like second time? Third time? Woo.
Ooh.
Third
Yeah.
time, yes.
All right.
Wonderful, great. Well, keep up the great work. And again, we're very, very proud of you. You make our town proud and you make your school proud. And this is really the very best part of being on school committee is to honor our students. And our student athletes are especially special. So we really, really are so happy you came here tonight. And I think this deserves a standing ovation. What do you think, guys?
Yes.
Come on. And before I let you sit down, I would like to also thank your parents and your coaches, your teachers who have supported you through this. And if there's anybody in the public that would like to come forward and use the microphone to comment, we would be very appreciative. Well, looks like someone special's coming forward.
I'm gonna comment, Joe Lucian, principal at Alshon Feinsline Middle School. Couple things. First of all the parents, I'd like to thank you. It's been a really passionate couple of years, and I love seeing the kids out laughing, having fun, and doing their thing. So please, that is part of all of what you have done showed over the past 100 years. So thank you. That's the first thing. Second thing, if you didn't know this, Coach Gregory, this is their very first year. So boy, what a first year that team had.
Woo!
Congratulations. Third thing, I have to congratulate everybody here. You had a wonderful season. You made me super proud of you all. And even more so, if you know any of these kids, they are wonderful, wonderful kids. Not just on the field, but outside and as people. They're kind, they're polite, and it is super proud of to have them go and represent our school. So thank you, parents, for that, and thank you all for doing the right thing. I appreciate it. Congrats, you had a wonderful season. I hope I get to see most of you do it again next year, and the same thing when you get up to the high school. So congratulations, everybody.
Anybody else from the public who would like to speak or comment? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Real quickly, it takes a village to raise a child. You all heard that saying? The village. Into the children.
Thank you. Anyone else? Great. Well, I'm going to let you all leave the meeting because probably you don't want to stay for the whole meeting, or do you? No? I know you have homework. So thank you so much for coming. And this was wonderful to have you here. Thank you. Bye. Well, I know. Well, Amy said she was a little nervous at the week down because a lot of the kids are going and I said, oh, they're not going to leave. Get nervous. That was fun. So many of them, but that's great, you know. A good thing for them to. Where's he going? Mr. Politician. Mr. Florio. Mr. Florio's commits. I need a whip. Continue the meeting. The next agenda item is number 7. Our reference number 1 is Contract Signing Authority Policy DHA. It's our second reading. I think it's fair to say that we could do a motion to dispense with the second reading. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to dispense with the second reading of the contract signing authority policy DHA.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to the approval of the actual policy DHA. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the contract signing authority policy DHA.
Second the motion.
Any comments or questions from the committee? Anything from the public? Seeing and hearing nothing. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to the discussion and approval of senior accountant position, job description and salary range, which was our reference number 2. And I will turn this over to Mr. Levis.
Thank you. So there's, in the packet, you'll see there's a couple of, there should be 3 job descriptions. One for the original accountant position that I'll talk about briefly, the controller position, and then the new job description that we're proposing for the senior accountant. I also put in the certified, non-certified administrative salary and evaluation policy, CDA, CFB, because that's where we have the range of salaries for non-certified and certified administrators. But I'm just going to go quickly through a presentation. I gave you another version that I think I had made one change, which was when we get into the controller, I think there's like an asterisk and some, but I'll point that out. So Don, I don't know if you can, yeah, it would be helpful if I pull mine up. So just a little history of the finance department, and this is not history like back BC before Craig. This is this is my history. I know. Well, I apologize for that, but you guys didn't find that funny, did you? Thanks.
I did.
No. All right. Let's hope it goes uphill. So July 2016, when I started as superintendent, at the time we had a part-time director of finance, brilliant individual. I mean, worked across the state, a phenomenal, brilliant individual, but it was part-time, a couple of days a week. We had a 1.0 controller, a 1.0 accountant. We had the equivalency of 2 full-time clerks, but it was broken up under 3 individuals at the time. July 2017, we had the director of finance, a controller, one full-time equivalent accountant, and then we had 2 full-time equivalent clerks. We did some shifting, so we didn't have any more, but it was actually 2 individuals. In July of 2018, we had the same staffing, but on July 6th, our accountant left Coventry for another position, and we didn't fill that, and we used those funds, and those who are on the committee, remember, we were going through a lot of financial issues, and we used those funds. We were one of the few districts in the state, definitely our size, that didn't have a full-time data person. We had a consultant, and funding and everything is based on our data. So much, it has such a role to have effective, accurate data. And so that's when Miss Martin took the job. And then we have 2 full-time equivalent clerks. I also want to make reference that we have clerks in the HR that have always supported finance in terms of payroll and benefits and that information we need. but that's they're not dedicated to the finance department. So then fast forward in 2021, we had our director of finance, but Mr. Sands transitioned earlier in that year. The controller retired at the end of June. And we did post the position. And we had 2 clerks. So just important to recognize, since July, we've had a director of finance. And we have some consulting, Miss Mangiarelli has been supporting, but not doing the work, really supporting and historical perspective, because there's so many projects that we're involved with that Miss Mangiarelli had started that Mr. Sands has taken on. So the next slide. So we posted the position of June 2021, and to be honest with it, we had a couple of qualified candidates, and they took other jobs. When we went to do the interviews, we found that they had taken other jobs. And some people can say, well, why didn't you just interview quickly? Because there's a lot going on. Anybody that knows what we've been involved with, there's a lot going on, and it's a priority. But we also want to make sure we were hoping to get 4 or 5 candidates. And by the time we did set up interviews, we lost the ones that we felt were qualified. We weren't able to hire. We tried reposting. We tried using other sources like Indeed and, other advertising. We made phone calls, try to reach out using people, reaching out to people that we knew. And we went nowhere. In the meantime, there's a lot of work going on. We'll talk about that in a bit. So, we also have a very capable director of human resources who has, worked in human resources for 30 years. She worked with Harold, Mr. Sands, our director of finance, and they thought, let's change the title, right? Maybe we'll go after a different individuals, because we really didn't have anybody, not for the lack of trying. So they posted it as senior accountant. We didn't change the job description. We really changed the title. And then we saw that we had some excellent candidates apply. Now, I know in the world of finance, a controller usually is above senior accountant. I had that conversation with Mr. Sands. We had that conversation with Miss Mangiarelli. But in this case, we're able to get different individuals applying to the position. We saw that they had higher qualifications, some of these individuals in experience. But their current rate of pay of people was about $15,000 to $20,000. And when I go back to that document, that's like 75 to 80 for the controller. And we just recently went through that, and it was a different time. And, we went through and raised different salaries, and, we didn't feel the need to do that, but we also weren't hiring. We had somebody that been in the position, been consistent for as long as I've been here. When we had that other policy that I mentioned before approved. What we also recognized is that looking at Massachusetts and Connecticut, that the salaries are typically, and I received this, like I did a reference of again, Indeed, and I think the other one was Zip Recruiter. And looking at some salaries in Massachusetts in terms of just education. But there was about approximately $24,000. And so, anything about the geography of Rhode Island, even though sometimes, the mindset in Rhode Island is people don't want to travel far, it isn't a long ride to go to Massachusetts or Connecticut. And so, can you go to the next page? So what we put together, and I say we, but really Harold and Margaret and Miss Mangiarelli supported this, is we looked at going back to, let me back up also, is that one of the things we had talked about when Miss Mangiarelli was here and we didn't fill the accountant position was we were going to look at finance as a department, and that was her intent, to see what kind of position, what other position would we need moving forward. We never did that. We went into a pandemic, and then there was a transition. And honestly, the focus has been on just the transition aspect. Like I said, Mr. Sands has taken this all on. And in full disclosure, when we went out to hire for a finance director, We ran into the same kind of situation. And because there's an individual we all know that works for the school committee that had a relationship, we strongly encouraged. Mr. Sands took a long time to make a decision. I don't want to get into too much, but spent a lot of time with Ms. Mangiarelli before he even applied. And so fast forward, unfortunately, for reasons, I mean, good reasons, our former controller retired, had other priorities in her life, and she did a phenomenal job for us. But for the last 4 months, we've been trying, and if you look at the senior accountant position, I just want to justify why we think this is important. So what we did is the job description is a combination of accountant and controller functions. We're looking for a high level of expertise in accounting and in financial controls. Federal, and these are some of the responsibilities that would be shared by this. The federal grant, federal funds oversight and reporting, including the USDA, the food. Also working with our contract and with Sodexo, our food service management. Internal accounts. We just transitioned to a new Keystone software system. And I have to be honest with, there's challenges in there that none of us thought. To fix one little situation that we thought was fixed, hopefully it's fixed now. But Mr. Sands has spent a good part of a week spending time, conference calls, dealing with other individuals who are rightfully frustrated because the system isn't working the way it should be. That has taken on a whole life of itself, the whole transition to Keystone. Assist in the budget process, budget development. One of the big changes in Title 16 was the governance component and the role that principals play in the budget process, the role that school improvement teams play. And before it was really done central office, there was money allocated and the finance director would work with them and kind of show them where the money is. But now there's a lot more work that needs to be done, and we need to support that work because our principals, like myself, we're not financial experts, but we have a lot of responsibility. Mr. Lucian is going to be responsible for, in the, 10, 11 million dollars, $12 million when you look at personnel and supplies and, facilities needs, and he's going to be an integral piece, and we have to support that. And right now we have Mr. Sands. And again, not taken away from our clerks, they do a phenomenal job. And if you know them, they are passionate and dedicated, but their focus is they need to stay in their lane, accounts payable, accounts receivable, managing our accounts. Assisting contract and RFP development, and I don't want to get into just the necessity of school construction, though it's a big part. In our meeting, the building meeting the other night, we met with the OPM, which is the owner's project manager, and they talked about first thing is developing an RFP for the architect, and Mr. Sands is going to have to be part of that, right? I mean, or somebody's going to be part of that from finances. So also all the contracts, we have contracts with Sodexo, our bus contracts, all the contract work we need to do. I mentioned assist in the necessity for school construction process, and being an optimist, when that bond passes, there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of meetings, and that's going to be the finances is so important. If you've paid attention to any of the work we're doing now, finances are a sticking point right now, obviously, because it's a lot of money, but the work that the finance team has done, and Mr. Murray and Ms. Patno and others at this table that are part of the process, the constant thread is finance, and we need that expertise. Assistant pension oversight, right? One of the roles that we have is looking at the pensions, looking at right now, there's a board that sits with the SRP pension, right? But looking at all our pensions, we also have a small pension that we manage ourselves for non-certified employees. So ability to supervise and manage staff. Before our controller was kind of be able to stay in a certain lane, we need somebody that can take on more responsibilities. To support for school-based and district-wide daily financial transactions. And again, I mentioned about our different systems, just our Keystone. I mean, honestly, we could have somebody just dealing with that right now, because I know there's a lot of frustration in different people using it. There's a lot, Keystone's working with us, but these are all time-consuming. the audit is a major piece. We've always struggled with the audit, and there's been a lot of reasons why. And it's something that we've committed that we're going to make sure that we do our part on time. The town is committed that they're going to do their part. And then just the whole budget process, just the budget process. You see how challenging the budget process has been for us, at least during my tenure here. I think once it was kind of a slam dunk when we went forward with the all-day K. But other than that, it's been a challenge. So what I'm saying is that as superintendent, I'm responsible for everything, and it's easy to say that, and then, like it sounds like maybe a cliche, but, I appreciate the fact that Mr. Sands came to us, had taken a program that was probably going to be shut down, and in a year or 2 years, got them to the point where they had over $1 million in fund balance and very stable, and came to us in knowing that budgets had failed and that the challenges we've had. And I feel like as superintendent that even though I can't just make somebody materialize, that I've been failing to provide support for 4 months. And you know how important, and I know the committee, your responsibility is governance, hiring the superintendent, and finances. And so, I appreciate the work that he and Ms. Card did putting this together. I appreciate the support that we've had from Ms. Mangiarelli, and also looking at this, reviewing this. Then I want to go to the last page, just the funding for the position. So I'd mentioned before that in our interview process, we've had some, with just the name of the change, we've had some great candidates come forward. But they're not going to come here. First of all, their roles are a little different, what their experience is. And that made us realize that, there's needs that we have and we could blend the two. And that's what Mr. Sands and Ms. Card did with the support of Ms. Mangiarelli. So we've created this new position. And I just want to talk about the budget. So we've gone 4 months. We have budgeted $98,875 for salary and benefits. The second line really doesn't matter because we haven't spent any of that. But I just wanted to show that, for 4 months, we've had, and that's a, $32,000. It's more than that, a little bit more, but that's considered $32,000 that we haven't spent out of that line. What I'm proposing based on, and it's not what these other people are making, but we're also, I get it, we're an educational institution. But if we're going to try to hire somebody with this experience and these skill sets to even enter the race, I think we've got to be somewhere between $88,000 and $95,000. And the reason I chose that $7,000, because if you look at the range, our ranges went from like $5,000 to $8,000. And it cannot be an entry level. We need someone that has skills, someone, the likelihood of us getting somebody that has school experience is almost non-existent right now. Either we'd get someone that's retired that may, and we haven't been able to do that. I've worked through the people that I know. I've worked through our attorney, different colleagues that I've had to try to get somebody even that would be helpful in the situation. And we haven't been able to get anybody yet. And we haven't resorted to go I just was going to go to the temp, because then we're going to go get, somebody that's really just going to stay in their lane and do like accounting. And we need more than that based on everything that I shared before. We also have to recognize the market. I know that we had conversations before a couple of months ago when we talked about substitutes, but you also heard from Miss Fallon, who's making all these calls, Diane Fallon in our HR office that works for Mrs. Card, is that as soon as we raised the rate, we were able to onboard in a few months. I think it was 60 or 70, and I can't remember the exact number, but she had said that. And the other part too is that I guess this is something, I sent an email out to our staff today, and I always tell people how what keeps me here are the kids, right? And yet recently that wasn't really working for me. Like, I love the kids, and tonight was wonderful, but it's more than that. And I've been stuck, like starting to not believe my own self-talk every day. And then I realized, and last night I had dinner with somebody from work, a gentleman that I'm friends with, and before that I was at the clinic where we served over 300 people. And we had so many staff that were supporting. But what I realized is what keeps me here is obviously the kids, but it's the staff I work with. Like, I love the people I work with. And so, and maybe nobody cares about this, but I do. And I just happen to be the superintendent. So I think I have a right to say it, is that I feel like I'm not doing my part because have a deficit in this department. And, and I'll just look to, Mr. Murray, all the expectations we have just on the school. But, and like, I ask, I've been asking Mr. Sands to do a lot, and sometimes it's heated, right? Because it's like, I just want to know, like, I just need to know. And he's pulled so many ways. And I said, like, I need to get somebody in that has skills, that has expertise, that we can work as a team. Right now, it's a team of 3. I mean, think about it. And that's why we're an $80 million organization with 800 employees, right? And we need to think of ourselves as a force. And I'm embarrassed to the fact that I have a finance director and 2 clerks, and they all work their butts off. Mr. Sands is there well beyond his contractual hours. He's doing, yeoman's work on the weekend, and this is new, right? Dealing with the public municipality, and I want to thank you for taking the job, but this is all new. This is something you don't know you get into until you experience it. So I know I'm taking a lot of time here. I'm frustrated at the situation. And I am frustrated at myself, but I think we have an opportunity here to where we can bring on some expertise. But we're asking you to look at the job description, because the school committee has authority over, the job descriptions you need to approve, and also the salary. And I could have come and we could have said it's going to be a controller, just call it that, but it really isn't. And then come and ask for more, because I have the right, policy to come before the school committee, but it's more than that. And that's why we wanted to do this public presentation. And I'm doing it, not that Mr. Sands can, because I feel like it's my responsibility as superintendent. So with that, I'm going to stop. And I know if you have, obviously questions for me, questions for Mr. Sands.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. I think we'll start with Mr. Pearson. Questions, comments?
Yes, thank you. Looking at the job description for this new position, which in effect would replace controller and accountants, and then we now have senior accountants. In the minimum requirements section, you have a statement there in the second bullet point says minimum of 10 years of management and supervisory experience. Whereas previously, as you mentioned, controller being a senior position over an accountant only had minimum of 5 years of management and supervisory experience. Can you describe the rationale behind changing that to 10 years?
Do you want to explain the rationale? I'll defer to Ms. Card into Mr. Sands.
Please come to the microphone and make sure it's on, because the folks on Zoom can't hear.
YouTube.
So hello, Harold Sands. Thank you for calling us up. The reasoning for the 10 years was that we really needed somebody that had a lot of experience coming in. No longer, the 5 years we didn't feel was sufficient, but we wanted somebody that was there for a long period of time.
We're looking also for 5 years as a controller, but I needed 10 years of accounting experience.
That's not what this says, though. That's my issue. This says
Yeah.
10 years of management and supervisory experience. It has nothing to do with how long the person has been an accountant or a controller. It's specifically calling out management and supervisory experience. Is that the intent?
Supervisory and management experience, not just for that. We wanted accounting and everything else in there. So that could have been a misstep on our part.
Okay. If I'd like you to take another look at that and make sure we're really saying what we're saying. Do we want 10 years of accounting experience or combination of accounting and controlling, or do we want 10 years of management experience? Because that's two different kind of functions. additionally, so merging these two roles or jobs, controller and accountant, and really looking for someone with that skill set. Do you see, I know this is hard to predict long-term, so forgive me, but in the short term, do you see this really filling out the finance department for now? You would not anticipate a need for, say, an additional accountant or some other position?
Looking into the future, I can't really predict that, but at this point in time, we need somebody that's can get to on the ground fast, actionable, and is not more, is a working person right off the bat, as opposed to maybe a controller that's more delegation. This is something that we really need to get off the ground, because it's a bridge between the business office and the director's office, so that we can bring everybody together and really start looking and delving in where previous finance directors have already worked at. This is the quality of the people that we're getting as a senior accountant versus a controller is phenomenally different.
Can I just answer that too? The intent is, and a superintendent, that to answer your question, Mr. Pearson, is no, I don't plan on adding more. That was the whole idea between, and part of it's a continuation, because I probably wouldn't even suggested doing this, other than I knew from my conversations with our previous finance director that we were looking at a change. You don't go from, we went from having like 5 people down to 3. The intent, or we had 4. The intent was to look at reorganization. And without getting into too much of what other stuff that was going on, there was, we thought that we'd be in a situation where we'd be doing this. But then the transition took place, and, then we were down, a transition from Ms. Mangiarelli to Mr. Sands, but then our controller left at the end of the year. So the answer is that this, we believe, will replace those 2 positions, and there'll be no need for any more administrative positions, definitely.
So I see we posted this in September. Does that mean this action by the school committee to approve the job description and the salary changes for starting salary, is that holding up our ability to interview and hire someone from that pool, or do we have to post again?
No, well, I don't think we have to post again, but we'd have to bring people back, because right now we'd have to go back over I think we have some candidates. That's the point. We interviewed 4 candidates. We were down to 2. And then through that whole process, realized we can't go any further. Like, not if we're going to have them, we couldn't, because there's no even ability to negotiate.
That's my point. Time is of the essence here.
Correct.
If we
Correct.
delay, we potentially lose these candidates to, they could take another position elsewhere or lose interest.
And we've already seen that. I mean, we've already seen that before. Like, we didn't even get to the point where we do believe, now we didn't get into money because we never posted the funding. But we never even, the people that were quality candidates on paper for controller, they took other jobs. I don't know what their salaries were, but when it came time, and I have to be careful. I don't want to say that it just, what we were looking for in a match just didn't exist. And that was why we did the change. But through the interview process, we recognized that we needed to make some changes if we're going to get someone that can fill the needs of the district and actually, and that's why we're here tonight.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Why don't you guys just stay here just in case? I kind of figured Mr. Murray might have some questions.
I guess, so I would agree with Mr. Pearson on the experience and the minimum 10 years of management. I think the key here is school-related experience in accounting. And to that end, I would say that a CPA in private accounting is not really required. I know people don't understand that, but you could have somebody who comes into school and, as you know, has only worked in school or municipal environment, who never got a CPA, because you don't need a CPA in a private accounting. And so I would caution that being a hard requirement. And I would say that there's other qualifications out there that you could put in. I know GFOA has some programs if you want to put certifications, if you're comparing people. But I would say, I'd much rather have somebody with 10 years in school-related accounting over a CPA any day of the week. I'll say this, many know, and I'll speak through the eyes of my wife because many know my wife's an accountant. She just moved over to North Kingstown schools. So I put this in front of her. I talked to her briefly when we see each other these days.
Yeah, rarely.
And this is what we talk about, right? But her perspective on municipal, because she was a deputy finance director in NK, moved over to NK schools. She said, schools have so much more to deal with. Dealing with UCOA, the charting, just tracking of accounts, the sheer volume of financial information that you deal with
Yep.
is extraordinary. So I don't think people understand that. I think people, kind of say, well, it's public accounting, that's what they do. And, big deal. Just consider payroll. How many employees do we have on payroll?
800.
800 employees. That's 800 checks. We have to run through payroll every 2 weeks or whatever it is.
2 weeks, yeah.
Actually, every 2 weeks. So, and people get very angry when you miss their check. They have in North Kingstown, and I say all this because I think there might be people watching later, public, council, others who say, you're going to prove an upgrade in a position. In North Kingstown, they have 2 controllers. My wife is one of them. My wife oversees accounts payable and accounts receivable. So there's 2 additional people. The second controller oversees data and payroll and accruals. They also have a COO that oversees human resources, finance, and other. That person does procurement. So that procurement's outside that realm. So there's 6 individuals in finance there. 2 controllers making, I will say, between upwards of $90,000. So and it's a smaller school district. So I look at this and I look at what you're asking for and I see the staff resources we have. I think my main concern is that even with this position, you may not have enough. So I would ask that even with this position, which I'm in favor of, we really look at that organizational structure. Because in my opinion, and it goes to the point of the superintendent, one of the biggest things for me, without the like we can't do programs, we can't do sports, we can't get the audit done on time. None of this works without all the numbers working. What you do is essential, and it's sort of the dry part of schools. But in my experience, like people want to pay for programs, it's very important. And just finding monies that, let's say, have been encumbered in the past that can be unencumbered because somebody's not checking that a project ended and there's $50,000 encumbered that you don't realize is actually in the budget, but it's never been accounted for. That's sort of money found. And I remember my wife at one point had found upwards of $1 million in NK. That was just there on the books, just never unencumbered. So, and I will put it into perspective also for those who, and I'll just say this, my wife also worked in Westerly for a while. And that finance director was doing municipal and schools, which also always sounds like a great idea, right? We'll just merge them. That finance director had a meltdown. She was at meetings all the time, literally had a meltdown and left. So, anybody who thinks that's a good efficiency strategy, it's not. So, the sheer amount of meetings and just that we've had on the building side, I understand what you're going through. To meetings that you've had to attend, you're running a financial team meeting during audit and budget and everything else that's coming up. So, needless to say, I'm in favor.
Thank you.
I guess my other concern is, and it's not really a concern, it's a suggestion. And I know you've already kind of posted this, but you may also want to consider a deputy finance director sort of title. Because what you're asking for is really a high-level assistant to the finance director who may assume your role in your absence. And that kind of lends it. And I would say also like the pay scale at 88, it sounds high, but I'm telling you, I'm in the market right now for municipal employees, and it's very, very difficult to find qualified people. And so if you find one, they're a diamond in the rough. So having the flexibility to, if you find the diamond in the rough, be able to go to the high end of the scale, I think is key. I'd much rather pay an extra couple $1,000s for that key person who does it right than to have the person who does it wrong, especially when it comes to finance, and save a couple
But we can always
$1,000s.
come back to,
Yeah.
assuming that the committee approves
I
this,
understand
we
it, but
can
I'm
come back
just,
to.
I'm just saying, like, I know others may not be in favor of that, but I'm just stating that in that, for the benefit of others who may think that's a high salary in this day and age for, the other suggestion I would just say on the job description is bachelor's degree, and this is typical master's preferred,
Right.
sort of putting it out there. Not required, but preferred.
Just
For this
like the
level of
CPA,
position.
It also says though that equivalent experience, we're not locked into the CPA,
Yeah, I
but it
just
gives
think,
us flexibility.
I just think it's a trap most people fall into. I see
Right,
this a lot,
right.
even the public, they say, well, they're not a CPA, they can't be a finance director, even on the municipal side. And
No, it's not
it's
true.
false.
Yeah.
So I just feel like there's better ways to evaluate people instead of just going to that default, because I think it might scare some people away of saying, I don't have a CPA, I'm not gonna, there's a lot of people out there who are hesitant about jumping ship, who, even if a job offer presents itself, they're comfortable. But the less barriers to entry we have and the more palatable it seems, we're gonna grab those people. Getting a better title, something like a deputy finance, sounds really good on their resume. And so if you're looking at senior accountant versus a deputy director, now you're getting into like somebody who just maybe wants to move to finance
Right.
director, but isn't quite at
Yeah,
that level. And I'm just telling you based on my experience. So I know that was long-winded. I'm in favor of it. I think, if you're willing to accept some of my comments, and just like Mr. Pearson, revise a little bit of the job posting. Certainly fine with what you're proposing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio.
No questions, Madam Chair.
I think any questions I had have been answered. I'm fully supportive of this. I had one suggestion about the years of experience in management. You might say 5 required, or whatever, and then say 10 preferred.
Right.
And that's another way of getting around sort of like the master's and or CPA or whatever, so that you're stating that would be great if you, had them, and that would maybe delineate a person as opposed to someone who only has 5 years experience. So there might be some diamonds in the rough with only 5, but if you have someone with 10, that's even better. But, that's another way of looking at it. But, I don't really think you have to change anything about, well, you might want to work on it, but you've got some
We can-
people, so you can get
Yeah.
going on it.
Yeah, we can talk. I mean, because I
We
mean,
need
I
to get
think,
going on
well,
this.
if the committee approves it tonight, we can come back with a change of a name. We can
Right,
come up with
yeah.
some of the recommendations. And that way you just reapprove the job description. So, but we can continue with the process. So.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are we ready to move on this? Make a motion?
Second the motion?
And before I call for the vote, are there any other citizens gathered that would like to comment on this or have any concerns about this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to number 9, presentation of Coventry Public Schools high-quality curriculum development, adoption, implementation, and revision process.
Oh, darn.
I think we're going to table this tonight.
Oh.
Well, to know that I deal with this on a regular basis now that I've moved to a different position.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, right. Good evening. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here reviewing.
You probably
First-
have to get right up to the
I do?
microphone. Yeah,
Okay.
if people on Zoom hear you. want to
Perfect.
hear you.
So I'm really excited to be here reviewing the work that Don has started, and he'll jump in, I'm sure, to help out with some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. The work that we're doing obviously is ongoing. It's across all levels and it's super intense. But I really do believe that everybody that I've worked with since I've started in this position is really committed to what we have on our website about dedicated to excellence. So I have brought some people with me this evening to help with the presentation. I have Chuck Brancho from the high school, who's the department head at the high school, and also Diana LaChance, who's a 3rd grade teacher at Black Rock. I also invited somebody from the middle school, but unfortunately we weren't able to have somebody that came. I was really strategic about who I chose based on where they are in the process of either selecting or implementing in year 1 or year 2. So With that said, I have also put out here for you, I brought some of the ELA materials that we have purchased over the past couple of years at the elementary level. I also have, so we can have a chance if you want to stop by the table. I also brought for you, and I'll bring them over to you, but a packet of the, we've had 3 professional development days so far this year out of 6, already 3 professional development days. And what I've brought for you are the sessions that were offered at all the different levels, elementary, middle, high school, and SRP, so that you'll be able to see the kind of work that we've been doing over the past 3 professional development days. I'll bring those over to you in a second. I'm afraid to right now. I'm watching the gentleman over here have a side conversation, so I'm sure they're preparing. So Don is going to be flicking the presentation for me today. So
about you.
so tonight I plan on talking to you about the current work that we're involved in. Also want to talk to you a little bit about RIDE's definition and expectation around implementing new curriculum. Selecting, adopting, and implementing. Also, the steps that we've taken in Coventry towards selecting new materials, what the implementation process looks like, and then a little bit about what the full adoption process and timeline is going to look like. So our current curriculum work right now in 21-22 is starting off with telling you that there is some work, and I'm going to let Don speak to this a little bit, about finalizing some curriculums that he worked on last year. Don, do you want to talk about those at all?
So when I was curriculum director, I came before the committee a few different times to talk about some of the curriculum work we were doing. If you recall, we had created a cycle, and the curriculum cycle was based on a few different things, but mostly it was based on the fact that we had a number of curriculum areas that had not been updated for many years. A few in particular for almost 30 plus years had not been adopted or implemented or even had a chance for revision. So our priority at the time was phys ed and health, social studies, world language, and library media. So part of what we've been doing is looking at wrapping some of them up. I will say to you that phys ed and health are essentially written. They're just going to be coming forward for school committee approval. Social studies is essentially done for middle school and high school. So that'd be ready for school committee approval as well. We did hit the pause button on elementary because when we started looking at elementary ELA programs, many of them have the social studies component embedded into the reading program. And instead of creating a separate social studies curriculum for elementary, we decided to hold off and see what ELA program we came up with and to see where they aligned with each other. World language was a big lift because we were doing 2 things at one time. We were redoing the entire world language curriculum that had not been done in a long time. But if you recall, and this was on our last strategic plan, we're also moving world language into the middle school. And so they were also creating world language curriculum for the middle school at the same time, even before the schedule that you approved last year was in place for kids to have world language in their schedule. And library media has been kind of picking at it as they go. There's been some adoptions at the state level around, there's one particular program called Empire State. It's out of New York, and it's a scope and sequence of skills. And so library media has been, that's statewide, Rhode Island has been using that as their scope and sequence. But in Coventry, the other thing we did, which is pretty much done at this point, is we integrated computer science into library media because there's a state requirement for computer science K to 12. And we did not have a K component. We have a middle school component and a high school component. So we're integrating that into library media so that there would be consistent instruction while the kids are at the elementary school.
So that is a summary of something that's coming to you real soon. Once we get those up in front of our curriculum council and reviewed with the teachers that are all within those departments, we'll be coming to you soon for approval on those. So here's the other curriculum work this year, and this is no small lift. This year, currently right now, we are implementing grades 3 to 5 ELA. We're in year 1 of that. There's currently 48 teachers that are implementing the 3 to 5 ELA. And then also included in that is our special educators, as well as interventionists, reading interventionists. And we are taking on in early spring, training K-2 in adopting a new ELA program.
And if I can interrupt, we also, I neglected to say in the first bullet, we also have already fully implemented a new ELA series at the middle school.
That's on here.
Oops.
It's coming. So we're piloting currently right now and working on selecting new math materials in K-5. I know that we had talked about this before in another meeting, but I wrote a grant at the end of last year, and we were able to gain access to Zern math, and our summer ramp up program used it. And then any teachers in grades K-5 that wanted to pilot that were allowed access to all of the materials and to pilot that for this year. We will be piloting some other math materials this year too, hoping to select. And about 70%, just so you know, about 70% of our K-5 teachers agreed to pilot the Zern math this year. So that's great. We are also implementing in grades 6 through 8. We're in year 2 of their ELA, and math is in year 1 of implementation at the middle school. We're also piloting and selecting and beginning training in the Coventry High School ELA department. Chuck's going to spend some time in a second talking to you a little bit about that adoption process. And finally, we are piloting, selecting, and beginning training at Coventry High School math. So this is no small lift. We are constantly talking about materials, curriculum, and training. Right now, it's what lives in my office every day. I think it's important for me to talk to you a little bit about the RIDE definition of curriculum. There's a lot of debate amongst professionals about what is curriculum, and is it the actual materials? Is it what's written? So I think it's important for me to tell you how RIDE defines curriculum. And they define curriculum as the sequence of planned experiences where students are practicing and achieving proficiency in content and applied learning skills. It's really about what's essential for teaching and learning so that all students have access to rigorous academic experiences. But they really say the necessary 4 things you need to have in your curriculum are their goals, which is basically your learning targets, your scope and sequence, the methods that you're going to use, and it's the necessary methods, not all methods, but the necessary methods. The materials that you're going to be using are part of your curriculum, and then also the assessments, and all of those things together, how you're going to effectively support student instruction and learning. So I'm sure you've heard this somewhere down the line from Don, but there is legislation about high quality curriculum materials that are required by Rhode Island. And we're in the process of selecting those. Material adoption in ELA and math need to be completed by June of 2023, and that's K-12, and in science by June of 2025. Also on our plate right now is the written scope and sequence that has both vertical and horizontal alignment. And Rhode Island just came out with the new frameworks. They were just released. So I need to integrate and work with teams on what are their expectations in terms of learning targets at each grade level, and how does that work into our scope and sequence. Professional development for teachers is super important. And it's not about a drive-by, throw them some quick training. It needs to be done in a really strategic manner where teachers are able to get the training, have coaching, and also job embedded supports in order to make sure that we're implementing it to the best of our ability. And sometimes that takes more than a year. And that's why I said we're in year 2 of implementation at the middle school. We also need to plan for assessment and grading when you bring on new curriculum. So that's on our plate as well. Communicating to parents and the community about the curriculum, and then ongoing analysis of student work and achievement. How is what we're implementing working? Is it making a difference? And this is just a lot of work that I'm really excited to be a part of. And I'm working with some phenomenal people of which I'm going to introduce Chuck. And could you hit that button one more time, Mr. Cowart? And Chuck's going to talk to you a little about this process with Ed Reports that RIDE has worked with Ed Reports and they're supporting teams of administrators and teachers to help us adopt this high quality curriculum. So this is the process that Chuck's been in since August, right, Chuck? That's when we started. Come on up.
Thank you for having me. My name, you read that list, my anxiety got a little bit higher and higher. So when I talked to Julie Boyle, who did a lot of the selection process last year with ELA, she warned me that it was a very intense process, and she was absolutely correct. Don, do you have my slides? So I'm going to go through the steps that we've taken so far for the math curriculum selection. The first and most important thing, we've followed the lead for Ed Reports, and RIDE has sponsored us to be able to kind of go through their process. And Erin Coyne has been a tremendous help. Amy's been helpful. But we started with a teacher survey because we wanted to figure out, what do we need? You know, what does our school need? What do the students need? And we came up with 3 target areas. I'll talk about those in a minute. And then we looked at our SAT data, and I've always historically been looking at SAT data of what are our gaps, what are our deficiencies right now, because we have to make sure that our curriculum is aligned to the SAT. We also look at subgroups data to make sure that we're getting all the kids' services that they need, whether it's IEP, ELL, whatever it is. So here is a picture of our teacher survey. I think this is year 8 for me for curriculum coordinator, but we've been doing our own homegrown curriculum, like most districts in the state, for at least probably 10, 12 years. But you can see that almost half of the teachers in the math department are spending 46 hours a week just searching for and creating materials. And I know for myself, I keep redoing them every year, so to try to improve them. But when you see this, the graphic, there's no blue 0 to 1. And I'm not saying that we're looking to do less work. We want to shift the priority, because if we have these materials, we can then look at data. We can then respond to what the students need and create lessons that are targeted to the students' needs. So this has been a challenge for quite some time. So this was another piece of the survey. We asked, what is our current curriculum missing and lacking? And you can see a lot of the top priorities ended up being aligned to this goal. So differentiation is one of our pillars that we're looking for. That was one of the top things that people had mentioned. It is challenging in a classroom, and even with levels that we do have in high school, to make sure that every student is getting what they need. The biggest one was a physical book resource. Teachers have been clamoring for that. I don't know if kids have been, because I have a feeling if they give a kid a book, they're not going to really use it too much. But I think it's more of like a physical book of like, let's have like a sequence that we can actually all follow and have the same resource that we're going to use. The high quality instructional supports, that's ties into our second priority for tech supports. We really wanted to have something that is personalized and customized to the students, because it's not a one size fits all, especially in math. And our last priority was Rigor. So Rigor includes skills, concepts, and applications. So I think this is one of my biggest ones, because I feel like we've been doing too much skills stuff, and we've been focusing on, you need to know how to do this, how to use a quadratic equation, but they don't really know why or when. So the application and the concept, we really need to get a better balance. So I feel like these 3 pillars that we're focusing in on when we examine all the curriculum resources from all the different publishers, those are what CHS needs most. So here is a graphic that we created. We actually started with mathematics vision. So we looked at the district vision, we looked at the high school vision, and then National Council of Teachers in Mathematics, we took their vision and kind of tweaked it for us. And then that kind of supported those 3 things. We're looking to support them, to support the vision, to support the students. So our process, we started with the committee, and this was, I felt, a really, really important step, because if you don't have the right people at the table, you're going to go down a path that you don't want to go down. So I hand selected people that I wanted to represent all parties, and so that if they weren't on the committee, they felt like they were represented. That was my goal. So we have an awesome team. We have 3 math teachers and 1 special ed teacher, and it represents everyone on the department, but also all the different teaching styles, and all the subjects are represented at the table. So we have a really good, diverse, but fully representative group for us. This was interesting. So RIDE has published all the approved ones, all the green lighted ones. So there's a list that looks like there's like 40 something of them. But when we actually core down and said, okay, high school math, there's only 8. So it took us about 5 weeks to get it down to 3. And we actually decided on 2 products today. So we have McGraw-Hill Illustrative Math, and we have McGraw-Hill Reveal. The Reveal one is a little more of a traditional style. The illustrative is, it's more student-centered, it's more teacher-led. So it's going to be challenging for some teachers to get through that. But I think that if we get some proper PD, we'll have it at least piloted with Fidelity so we can get a good glimpse of how it affects kids. Like I told one teacher, because she was talking about that and her discomfort with it, and I said, no offense, but it's not about you. It's about the kids, and we want to see an impact. And I kind of misspoke a little bit because it has to be delivered with Fidelity. But in the end, it's about what the students learn and get out of it. So this is the product A, which we can fill in literally as of about 6-7 hours ago. So product A will be the illustrative math. Oh, this is Reveal. So this image kind of shows how Reveal works. It's more teacher directed. It has a really good technology component, but this is definitely more teacher centered. And then the other product is going to be more teacher facilitated, where the teacher delivers a problem. Like here's the problem. Do you understand what the problem is? And then the students work in groups or individually. So the teacher is going around at that point, facilitating those discussions, inserting when they can. All the tasks that are in illustrative math there's a lot of entry points. So they'll propose a scenario or a question, and it's self-scaffolded, I guess, because it's a lot of what do you see? What do you see in this diagram? What do you wonder about the scenario? So kids are able to enter at multiple different points. Then so that once the students work through the prompts, the teacher synthesizes everything at the end. So that synthesis is where the instruction happens, and teachers are more comfortable with the other way, right? They'll instruct, here's what you need to know, now let's go practice it. So that shift, I think, is challenging. I like it. I like this design better. It's kind of how I run my class. But if we go with this one, it's going to be a lot of work on the professional development side. So that is our question. So we're going to do a field test over the next 4 months. We're going to pilot those 2 products at every Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2. So we want to choose, we're going to iron this out actually tomorrow, hopefully. But we have all but 3 teachers in the department actually involved in the field test. And we're hoping to come up with, it's about finding a product that works for the kids. Because the teacher side, we can figure that out. But we're hoping to have a decision in late March. That way we can meet the timeline for all the contractual obligations. That's it. Any questions?
Maybe after.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you can see why Chuck is the teacher of the year, right? This year. He runs an amazing department. He's a super leader, and he knows just what to say to help his department rally together, whether it's going to be a tough lift or something that they're all agreeing with. I'm just impressed with his leadership skills. So thank you, Chuck. So the next part is to really talk to you a little bit about the implementation. So, Chuck's in the very first phase right now of, even though it's extremely hard work, he's in that phase right now of selecting, piloting, and whatnot. Diana, that I'm going to call up in a second, she's actually in the next phase, which is the implementation, and she's in year 1. And really, implementation starts with professional development. I know that it's not in your packet, but it's up here. I just thought it would be interesting. And Don, if you could just zoom in, because I think it's small, it'd be hard for them to see. Well, not really. Scroll up. This is just, so the EL. See this?
Well, Don, you know.
I'm here, I'm doing the best I can here. You finish school up, I'm a man.
Again, the good news is we do laugh every day. Yes. So back in the spring of 2021, the elementary schools started training last year for their implementation. So Dawn had worked with a company called Better Lessons. We hired them. They came in and did 3 professional developments to kind of introduce the product and I guess the methods that EL uses. And they introduced that to all the elementary teachers and special educators in grades 3 through 5. But that initial training is really so surface level. You really have to, once you get down into the planning and what's it going to look like in my classroom, it's really deep. But from August of 2021, which is just a couple of months ago, you're going to be amazed when you see this, until today, these are all of the professional development opportunities at the different levels that we have conducted. If you could keep scrolling, Mr. Cowart. This is in August that we've offered in the elementary, the middle, and the high school in those 3 PD days. And these are the ones that have something to do with the curriculums that we're piloting, implementing, and whatnot. So you just scroll this. It is a ton. So it's a lot of work. But it's good work, and it's work that's going to make a difference. So those are the professional development activities that we have been engaged in, and that's all in those packets for you at some point to look at. And now I'm going to have Diana come up and present for you what a week of implementing a new curriculum looks like in a classroom, 3rd grade classroom. By the way, Diana and I met 33 years ago at Black Rock School. We taught together. Thank you, Mr. Thank you. And she was definitely one of those colleagues that you walk away and say, I learned a ton from her. So I thank her publicly. I feel so excited to be able to say that she has made me the educator that I am today.
Sure. Don, I'll try not to direct you too much. Okay. All right. So thank you for having me. I'm giving you a little bird's eye view into a 3rd grade classroom, imagining that it's probably been a while since you've been there. And so I'm sure you want to visit again. I have been teaching for 40 years, and I can tell you that 3rd grade has changed dramatically. Teaching has changed dramatically. And what we ask of our kids is really quite impressive. So what you see on the screen there are the books in just the very first module of 3rd grade. And our first module is, the focus is how can I overcome my learning challenges and why are education, books, and reading so important? Mr. Cowart. So in this week at a glance, you will see that the children will engage in the lessons listed at the top of the screen. They'll do reading for gist, work on getting the lesson, a close read for citing text evidence that will convey the lesson, and then they will go into writing about the text. And those skills that they do in 3rd grade are actually the very same skills that you would see in a 4th grade classroom and a 5th grade classroom as well. And you can keep going. So we're going to go into lesson 1, and that was reading for getting the gist and the message of the story. You can advance, Mr. Cowart. And so we always start with the learning targets. And so we make sure that we clearly identify what are the targets that they're working on that day at the beginning of the lesson and again at the close of the lesson. So on day 1, the children would listen to the text read to them by the classroom teacher. Each of these texts are at a very demanding level. They are not able to read the text the first time through on their own. So we would read it to them, practicing good fluency skills. They hear the language of the text. And then after that, they will break into partnerships and they would work on getting the gist. Now, at this point of third grade, they are actually very good at getting the gist of the story. Somebody in the setting wanted, but the challenge was, so what happened? So they're doing this on their own. And so the teacher really can just kind of act as a facilitator, can buzz around the room and just assist those who are struggling, redirect them. They've got the text, they're looking back. And this is really something that we're just really facilitating this for them. On day 2, though, quite the opposite, children will do a very close read of the text. So we will dig really deep down into the language of this text. You can advance that. And we will discover the complexities of the English language. So in this story, more than anything else, we work on understanding the figurative language that is in this story. We also work on understanding the central message, the lesson, the theme, and then how the details in the text actually convey that message. So a shift here was, up until this point, we've been doing lesson for a while in third grade, and we've been going and citing text evidence that tells us the lesson. But we really never got to the point of, well, how does that text evidence convey the message? So this is a much deeper concept for kids and a much more thoughtful process. So this is what their graphic organizer looks like. You can see there's a lot going on. These children are 8 and 9 years old. And so we use this slide is actually comes from the classroom presentation. You can see how I color code it so that the arrow that points to how it's conveyed is red, and the communication of it would be blue on the next slide, where the lesson's going to go. So in this slide, you can see the complexity of that text. And we're going to, in this lesson, they will visit 4 excerpts of this book, all at this great complexity. And the teacher's role is to lead students through a series of questions that are designed for them to dig deeper into the meaning. And it's very much a teacher-directed discovery of the understanding and the really deep understanding of the text. And then on day 3, we start working on our writing. So at this point in third grade, children are writing an informative paragraph. It will very quickly become 3 paragraphs, and by the end of the year, it becomes 4, which is quite an accomplishment for 8 and 9 years old. You can advance. And so we use what's called the painted paragraph. Now, this model will follow them right through 5th grade as well. I'm uncertain as to whether this model continues into the middle school that has EL as well. My guess is possibly, because it's the same program, but 3, 4, 5 all use the painted paragraph. So we start with the painted paragraph, and very quickly that painted paragraph is going to become a painted essay. So each part becomes its own paragraph of information. So it's big jumps for them. So I know you want to, go back a slide, Mr. Cowart. You definitely want to take a look into the class. I'm going to preface each little day. I'll just say, so this was where we were getting the gist, just to remind you, and then I'll let you enjoy looking at the children and their engagement. Again, day 1, they're really working on their own. The teacher's facilitating. Day 2, the teacher's taking a much more direct role. And day 3, we're going to look at a model of a painted paragraph that we actually already created together to get them ready to do their own painted paragraph for this story. So this is rereading and getting the gist. This is their graphic organizer, and this is the part where they'll work on their own.
Keep reading on. You'll eventually get to the sentence. Fine. but you didn't have you just have to work and we couldn't have enough time to, you could not read because it was asleep. So slavery just ended, so they were poor and they didn't have any money, so there was no library.
So instead of going to school,
He tried to learn himself, but it was really hard to learn how the letters sound. They don't have so much. More than anything else, I learned to read. I got inspired by
So coming up here on day 2 is a much more directed, close read with me really probing them with questions designed to get them to understand how the message was
but does it
conveyed.
tell us about
Yes.
reading for him, Shyla?
That is his challenge.
That it is his challenge, that it's very hard. What do you think having slippery thoughts means? What does that mean to have a slippery thought? Jason? He doesn't remember what they are. And why does he use the word magic here? What does it mean that it will be like magic for him? That I will feel good and I will feel when I learn this magic. What's magic for him? Landon? Instant happiness. What's the magic here? The magic is what? Is he gonna go learn some magical spells? Is he Harry Potter? Shyla? He's gonna learn to read, and reading for him is like magic. And then what kind of language is all of this? What do we call this kind of language? It's not literal. We have to figure it out. So what's it called, Joey? Figure.
So coming up here again on day 3, I'm reminding them of a painted paragraph that we have already created together from a previous story, because they're going to be writing their painted paragraph in a very structured way to give them maximum support so that they go through it one step at a time and that they all meet with success.
So let's take a look at the model that we did when we told about Nsba's secret school. Just to refresh your memory, the model is up on the screen. So in our model, we wrote about Nsba and what was the challenge that she faced and how she overcame her challenge. And then we talked about why school was important. Why was it important for her to get access to books and to learn? Let's just take a moment and read together our introduction. Here, we told the name of the book, we told the author's name, and we told a little bit of background information about our main character. The next part of our painted paragraph, the green part, is our focus. And it's where we tell the reader what we're going to focus on, what our topic is. So our topic sentence would include the lesson in the story. What did we learn by reading the story? And we added our conclusion, which basically said again, what was the problem? What was the challenge for Nsba in our story? So we have these two sections match, introduction and conclusion. Topic sentence gives us a lesson. 2 details are our body. We are going to be working today to write a painted paragraph for Booker T. Washington. evening? What is the lesson in the story that we read this week? How was it conveyed to the text detail? How was each paragraph format? Now, why do you think I put persevere up on the screen for characters of the students? Why are we talking about perseverance today? Jason. True, but remember, characters of good students are about us. So why did I put up the perseverance today instead of maybe working with integrity or treating each other with kindness, compassion, and empathy? Why perseverance today based on what we're trying to do today? Hunter?
That a paragraph is kind of tricky, because you gotta remember the punctuation, spell things right, and you gotta say when the paragraph ends.
You have so much going on, don't you? Writing is hard. And writing takes perseverance. Look at all those things Hunter talked about that you have to remember, not only the ideas, which is one whole hard thing, but then we have to remember capitals and punctuation and spelling, and you have to remember the same paragraph format. There's so much going on. Plus, half the time, what do I see you all doing? Taking out your hands, because what's happening in your hands? It's getting tired and sore because that muscle is not all that strong just yet. So we need perseverance today. Okay, so we're going to challenge ourselves to keep working, keep trying as we build our pacing paragraphs today.
Thank you.
So if you just hop back into those slides, I think it finishes So after the 1 hour module that all the teachers are working on their topics, we do an all block for an hour. And in the all block, children rotate between a series of 5 different skills, 3 each day. And we work on reading and spelling fluency and grammar usage and mechanics. We do additional work with the complex text in small group. They do their independent reading in their independent reading books that go with the module, and their accountable responding in their journals. And we do word study, vocabulary, and additional writing. So it's a very rigorous program. This is what an all block would look like for students on the screen. They would rotate between 3 stations, 15 or 20 minutes a station, depending on how much time the teacher has. If they have the full hour, they get 20 minutes. If they have a little less, they do 15. So it's a pretty rigorous program, the EL program, but I have been working as a coach with the teachers, and they've been getting a lot of support from the coaches this year so that they can really embrace an ongoing professional development. And they're starting to see, I'm hearing more and more people say, I think they're getting it. They're getting the gist now. And I did it last year, and I can tell them that this first year is really hard, but we keep doing the same skills over and over, and they do get it by the end, and they make great progress. So in 40 years of teaching, I can tell you, I started my career in 3rd grade, and I'm still in 3rd grade, and it's vastly different what we ask of 8 and 9-year-olds. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's one more slide there that Di might be able to tell you about the modules.
Oh, I forgot about that. So just up on the screen, you can just see the year at a glance for 3rd grade. Every grade would be the same. Each grade would have 4 modules, grades 3 through 5. On the left, you see the topics of the 3rd grade modules. And on the right, you see the performance tasks that children would engage in at the end of the module. And every grade does that. So you can see that they're going to go from creating a pourquoi tale in the next module, which is a tell me why story, and goes to the 4-paragraph essay. And then at the end of the year, they plan and create their own public service announcement on water conservation and preservation after the water module. So it's pretty demanding work. Thanks.
So Di did a great job showing you what a glance into 3rd grade looks like. All of the grades are structured the same way with these, with the module block and then the all block after that. And part of when we were talking about professional development, I said to you that job embedded PD is absolutely a must. And so Don, with a lot of foresight, put into one of the grants that he wrote last year, an opportunity for us to take on coaches. And Di is one of the coaches. There's 3 other coaches in the district at the grades 3 to 5. And what their jobs are is on a professional development day, they work with teachers. And so Di today worked with all of the 3rd grade teachers across the district. She modeled lessons for them. They had discussions about how to implement the all block, and they talked about how to assist special education students in the regular ed classroom and make sure that they have access to these rigorous activities. She also spends time, I believe there's about 10 days between planning and also going and visiting classrooms. So she'll go right into the classrooms of other 3rd grade teachers and work with them on challenges they might be having, or possibly just collaborating with them on how to refine or improve the practice that they're doing in the classroom. So my last slide here is really, this is in the works right now. So what does a full adoption timeline look like? After the selection, which Chuck talked about, and the year 1 implementation, which Diana talked about, I think it's time at that point for us to say, so what is the written curriculum going to look like? What are some of the things that the framework says, that Rhode Island framework says we need to do in each of our grade levels? Thinking about EL right now, and what does this program do, and making sure that those things mesh. Also making sure, making sure that the horizontal and vertical alignment between the different grades are all connected. So when a child transitions from 5th grade to 6th grade, that we've made sure that those learning targets and things mesh between the different grade levels. So my hope is that once the first year of implementation is done, that we would put together a written curriculum that will be considered a draft, that we would post on the webpage for feedback from teachers, parents, and whatnot, have a review from the Curriculum Council, which is a group of individuals that are completely committed to making sure that we do a great job in revising our curriculum. Kind of need to reinvent a little bit of the process that we've used in the past, and that will be something I'll take on soon, and then bring it to you for approval. And finally, then our curriculum, not to say it's done, it's always a work in progress, but to put it in the full revision cycle and do some of the necessary changes, or even to reevaluate how is it impacting our students? What does the achievement look like? What kinds of revisions do we need to make, or overhauls do we need to make every, say, 5 to 7 years? So with that said, I don't believe that this is a job I can do alone. And so I know I put another quote up there, but then I said, I after I reviewed this a few times, alone we can do so little, but together we do so much. And I have learned just in my very short time in this role, although I felt like I was in a team in one school before, now I feel like I'm like part of just a little tiny piece of this puzzle of getting all of this curriculum work done. And I can't do it alone. And I feel so incredibly blessed to have great people, both at central office, at the administrators, with the administrators. They're always stepping up and helping with things, and at the teacher level to get things done. So I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Anzalone. We'll start with Mr. Pearson.
I think my question was answered. So I was going back to the slide about what RIDE defines as curriculum, where it talks about parent and community communication. But I think you covered that in one of your later slides, where the adoption plan, really being public about what we're offering our students for curriculum, and looking for feedback from teachers in the community. I think that, especially as of late, as we know, we live in a very interesting time. I think it's important to have that level of transparency and the ability for the community to give feedback in a constructive way, rather than have things devolve into chaos. So It's very encouraging to see that. Other than that, thank you all, you and everyone else involved in curriculum development for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And Mr. Pearson, I do want to tell you that I completely agree. And I have had a lot of parents reach out to me regarding questions around curriculum and whatnot. And I've had either good conversations with them on the phone or provided them with the information that they've requested, or even invited them in to have conversations with me one-on-one basis. So I encourage any of you, if somebody reaches out to you, that I'm open to having any kind of a conversation. I can't say that I know it all at all, and I probably won't, but I'm learning every day a little bit more and more. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
First, thank you for the great presentation, very thorough. This is important because this is, one of the pillars of our school. We talk about the building effort. There's a lot of stuff going on with curriculum. There's a lot of stuff going on in many other areas in schools. They all have to work together to operate. And I'm really glad that we have a curriculum coordinator position back and that you're doing great work. Don did a great job. This is a full-time job, and no doubt that this is an important role. So we need to make sure we're very cautious as a school committee ever eliminating this role, because curriculum is ongoing, ever changing. As we see, it's a lot of work. I do have a question, because speaking as somebody who doesn't do school curriculum, who's not a teacher, when you say to a parent, written scope and sequence that has vertical and horizontal alignment, Rhode Island Frameworks just released. To me, vertical and horizontal alignment, means something in my car that maybe helps it go straight.
Right,
So,
right.
Explain in simple terms what you mean by that.
I will. So I'm actually going to use what Chuck was talking about, where people were creating kind of their own curriculum at each grade level, right? So when you do it in a vacuum by yourself, say, for example, the Algebra 1 curriculum, when you're creating it as maybe even just a team of Algebra 1 teachers, and you didn't have a conversation with the 8th grade about the skills and the concepts and the problem solving and the applications that they did in 8th grade, and you didn't have a conversation with what Algebra 2 looked like, you have just negated what we would call vertical alignment. So you didn't connect from grade to grade to grade. Horizontal alignment is looking at, have you covered all of the learning targets and the scope and sequence to help kids meet standards at the end of that grade? So have you made sure you've hit all of those spots along the road to the end of the year targets? So horizontal and vertical alignment have to do with, really, if you think about it, across the grade level, or sometimes you even talk about it across the school, and vertical is up and down between like the different levels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. That was a good description.
And unfortunately, we get so caught up in education in our jargon. So I apologize. As the Rhode Island framework. So Don was telling me a story a little while ago about Massachusetts. They released frameworks a long time ago, which is basically they've set the stage in Massachusetts as to what every student needs to know before they leave a particular grade. So they've set these learning targets. Rhode Island didn't do that. We have standards, and we try to break apart standards, but they're really complicated. The frameworks really clearly define what kids need to know and be able to do when they leave a grade level. So Rhode Island jumped on the Massachusetts bus, and they started to write their own. So they have now completed them. I believe it's just in reading and math, but they're heading to make that happen in science and in the other areas too. So I want to delve in and spend a lot of time in those, and then compare what's the scope and sequence look like in EL for, grades K to 5, but what do the frameworks look like? Because if you think about it, when you adopt even though these programs are all green lighted, which means they've met the benchmark in all of these areas. If you think about it, if there was one beautiful program out there that met the needs of all students in all schools, everybody would be doing it, right? So there's going to be things that we're going to find, and I can already see a few of those things. We're going to see things that we find in a program where we're going to have to kind of look and put that within our curriculum, even though it's not in that program. We're going to want to go put that into our curriculum. One of those being phonics in this program ends in grade 2 in EL, and it doesn't go into grade 3. But the research says that you need to keep doing phonics or word study in grades 3, 4, and even into grade 5. And it's not in this program. So we need to figure out what are those learning targets that kids need to do in 3, 4, and 5 in EL and get those into our curriculum.
And just to add one thing, since test scores were released today and we'll be coming forward with RICAS and SAT and PSAT results in the next few months as we get through all the data. But when Rhode Island adopted the Massachusetts tests, we basically purchased the MCAS and rebranded it as the RICAS and we started giving the test. But Rhode Island did not adopt the frameworks. So I worked in Massachusetts for almost 10 years and the frameworks and the MCAS go hand in hand. It's the standards, it's the frameworks, it's the assessment. And when you purchase the assessment without purchasing the frameworks, or even considering your own frameworks, you're kind of missing a piece. So I think now that we're in year 3 or 4 of RICAS, I think they've realized that the frameworks are really necessary for teachers to know what they need to do at each grade level so that kids are being assessed on something that accurately represents what they've been taught.
You know what I like about this team?
What?
If I ask a question, you guys pull out a bazooka of information and shoot at me.
So sorry.
No, it's good. And you know what?
I could talk about this all day.
It shows,
I do.
It shows you're passionate. It shows you're knowledgeable. The level of expertise is impressive.
Luke, I'm fighting not to stand up. So I'll tell you more about the break.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have a pretty high level of expectation. Anybody who knows me, knows I press. But you always impress me with the level of knowledge, and that bodes well for the district when you talk about vertical integration. It's something I've talked in layman's terms, and I've spoken with Don about the fact that you would assume as a parent, right, all this was happening for years. Like I would assume this should have been happening all along. Like, why aren't you looking at different grades and seeing a progression path from K to 12? And like when I first sat down in Don's office and really talked to him about it, he's like, no, that's not happening. And what's even worse is that's not uncommon. That's every district in the state. So the fact that in typical Rhode Island, we love to adopt things and then just kind of make it up as we go. So we had the state testing scores come out today, which obviously due to COVID are disappointing across the board. But I think we're playing a little bit of catch up with all the frameworks and everything to actually support the programs that'll make the RICAS eventually successful. So I don't have any more questions. I just want to commend you for the work that you're doing, the passion you have, everyone has. Keep up the good work. The PD, the intensive PD is so critical. And I'm glad that we're taking advantage of it. And, anything we can do, I can do to support, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Florio.
No questions, Madam Chair.
I don't have any questions. I just want to commend all the work. It's just it's an exciting time. It's really exciting to see this. It just makes my heart glad. And I'm so impressed. And I loved your videos, Mrs. Lip. What's the last name? I'm sorry. Chance, what was it? Yeah, I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. Just because that's not what happened in my 3rd grade classroom. We sat in rows and, there wasn't any of that kind of thought-provoking, making kids think and really get to the bottom of things. And Chuck, same thing. I like the more student-centered kind of group working as opposed to having the teacher stand up there and direct everything that happens. So all of you, I'm just thoroughly impressed and amazed and so grateful that we have leaders like this in our district. And I can understand if I had your job, I'd be super excited as well. So great work.
Thank you.
Good job. Really.
Kathy, can I just add one thing about Mrs. LaChance?
Yes.
When we were first looking at ELA curriculum,
Yep.
I was still in the curriculum position and Diana was part of our selection
Yep.
committee. And this was like 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And unlike Chuck's experience where he had to go from 8 to 5 to 3,
Yep.
ELA at the elementary level, there were way more choices. And in some ways that's more intimidating And so I was at the table with Mrs. LaChance as we kind of widowed down to the choice that we are at now. And to be thinking back to the conversations that she and I had with the rest of the team 3 years ago about the potential of a curriculum and a potential of a program, and then to see the video of her actually teaching that program is so exciting to think that she and I were just sitting at a table in my mind, like last week, even though it was 3 years ago, talking about the impact, and now seeing her kids doing the work is just really, I think it's a very exciting time. I agree.
If I could actually just show you something really quickly. This is a teacher's manual for EL for one module. There's 4 of them. And this is just the one for the 1 hour. There's another one for the second hour. So, and if you open up this manual and you see how it's written, it's not like, oh, this is easy read. Like, it is detailed. It is, and this is why it is such an incredibly heavy lift for our teachers. And in the elementary, I mean, in the K-2, they also have to take on a foundational skills block part of this, which is another hour of the day. You know, it's phonics, phonemic awareness, all of those things, that learning to read. It is intense. And, kudos to the teachers in Coventry, because they have just been rocking it. They just really have. So.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think oftentimes parents and the public, people that don't have children in schools, they have a remembrance of what happened to them in school. And they don't understand how truly complicated all of this is, and how much work and thought goes into every day's lesson plans. So it's pretty amazing. And my hat goes off to all the teachers in this district as well. Amazing work that you're doing. It's not simple, 1, 2, 3. It's way more complicated than that. So great job. Looking forward to hearing seeing how the fruits of this work play out with kids being able to really achieve amazing things as they go through the grades and ultimately into jobs or college or wherever they end up. It's just amazing. Great work. All right. Is there anybody in the public that would like to say anything? I know most of you already know all about this stuff. I don't see anybody except school people. Okay, then we can go on to number 10, which is the building committee update. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. First of all, thanks to the school committee tonight for adopting the time extension. That will go over to the Council on Elementary Secondary Education through the SBA and hopefully get approved as a formality. So, but that is very important, because as we look for our potential bond, we need that extension in order to qualify for the incentive financing. We had a building committee meeting this past Tuesday. I think it was really productive. We had our new owners project manager, OPM, onboarded from Peregrine Group, which they've also worked on the Barrington Middle School. They just finished the East Providence High School. They're a great team, have a wealth of experience. They're going to be guiding us through this effort. In addition to an OPM, we'll eventually be looking for a commissioning agent if we move forward with the bond. The other thing that the OPM is going to be helping us with is the onboarding of an architectural team for the next phase of development. So while it's still a little early, and some may say premature, because we don't have a bond in place, or we don't have a ballot in place yet, we need to onboard an architectural team as soon as possible, because if we're going to hit the incentive timeline based on our schedule outlay, it means that we have to have an architect in place from March. And then if we do get the funding, pull the trigger and get design started. That will make sure that the incentives that have eventually run out in 2022 and 2023, we have shovels in the ground to qualify that additional 15%, which equates to upwards of $22 million additional funding from the state that doesn't come out of Coventry taxpayer pockets. So that's extremely important. We want to make sure we qualify for those incentives. I also want to make the school committee aware there will be a presentation that the building committee will be giving on November 8th. Many know that we had a There was a presentation given by the town manager and finance director subsequent to the school building committee's presentation to council. They presented what I would consider a very dim view of the financing strategy, where I would say ours was more of a path to progress. Theirs was a little bit more reserved. I'll just leave it at that. But we're hopeful. The town manager did reach out. We're supposed to meet next week, a small group with the town manager. I'm trying to also get the town manager to a finance team meeting. Mr. Sands sent out an email inviting the town manager to a working group, which I'm hopeful that we can come some sort of middle ground, looking at the financing and how this would work for the town and the voters. And then after that meeting, we'll have a group meeting the day after, whittle that down. And my hope is by November 8th, be able to present a joint plan. If that doesn't work and we can't find a middle ground, then we'll present a building committee plan that we feel works to get it on the ballot. And then the town's welcome to present whatever they may. The goal here for the council is to get them to pass a resolution for enabling legislation. And the key to that is really just putting it to the voters. And so the threshold that I look at to get to is not, is the project perfect in everybody's eyes? That's not the question in front of the council. The real question in front of council is it that poor of a project that it would bury the town so much that they can't even let the voters weigh in on it? And that's sort of the burden, because if you're going to, I've said it again and again, if you're going to take a vote away from somebody, you better be really sure of the reasons for it. I'm in favor of letting the public weigh in, have their say. If they vote it down, then so be the will. If they vote it up, so be the will. And we'll move forward. So I'm really hopeful that the council will see fit to put it to the voters of this town, have confidence in them, and let the building committee do their job in educating and communicating with the public. So again, as I always do, I ask for this committee, school committee support through this. I'm going to ask you also to attend on the 8th. I've asked the building committee to attend on the 8th. We're getting down to the last steps of this. This has been a 2-year process. We really need to show some support of the project if we really want our schools to move forward. I've said it again and again. Showing up matters. And so to anyone in the room as well who have student connections, parent connections, it's going to be important also that parents and students show up. If Coventry wants to move forward and be better, then we need to show that we're willing to put a little skin in the game and be better. And now's the time that we need people to actually show up. It's been a small group thus far. We need to start coordinating more people to support this effort and show that, there's not only a select few working hard on this effort. So does anybody have any questions? No? All right.
Anything from the public for Mr. Murray? Seeing nothing, we can move on to thank you, Mr. Murray, by the way, for the update. Moving on to agenda item number 11. I need to recuse myself from this discussion. So I'm going to leave the room and turn the meeting over to Mr. Levis and Mr. Florio. Please come back.
What we have before us is the Coventry School Committee resolution to issue a formal response to recent activity of the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, discussion and vote. Mr. Levis, can you explain this to us? I've read the school committee resolution. I just need I believe we all need some background information on what's going on.
Well, I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, this is a resolution that was suggested for the school committee. So I think if you've read it, I think it's obviously there's a discussion and a decision or that needs to be made by the school committee. Do you want to send this forward as a school committee and as a resolution? So I think it's, I would suggest that we go member to member and get their feedback on this resolution.
Mr. Pearson, would you like to voice your opinion on this resolution?
Yeah, absolutely. So resolution before you was discussed last week at a Gloucester School Committee meeting and adopted or passed unanimously by that committee. It was sometime after that this was brought to my attention. Some of the things in the resolution I was previously aware of, some of the things I was not. I think the crux of the matter is I think a couple lines have been crossed by the Rhode Island Association of School Committees, which is supposed to be a nonpartisan organization. They do advocacy efforts, but getting involved in a partisan recall effort for a candidate in another community is a bit crossing the line. It kind of tarnishes the organization's reputation as a nonpartisan educational advocacy group. But the more recent troubling thing has to do with, their very quick support of the NSBA letter that was sent out and the memo shortly thereafter by Attorney General Merrick Garland, starting to target parents, not as our partners in education, but as our adversaries. And fundamentally, this is against everything that I feel I was elected to do. And fundamentally, I don't feel like we should be sending dues to an organization that supports that. If you look at the NSBA vision statement, one of the bullet points here is, to achieve their vision, the active participation by parents, business people, civic leaders, and the public at large is necessary. Locally elected school boards who will work with their community and local educators to achieve success will help them achieve their vision. And then sending out a letter otherwise. And the response by RIASC was pretty clear. There was an email sent out by Mr. Duffy, who is the director of RIASC, to certain school committee members. I didn't receive this email directly. This was given to me after the Gloucester resolution had passed.
I never
And I
received
started
anything.
asking some questions. It looks like it was probably sent out to the officers of RIASC, but in the letter or the email to the RIASC officers, Mr. Duffy states that RIASC will contact our U.S. attorney as well as the FBI and coordinate with them on what steps, if any, we need to take. So please, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, please apprise me of any issues you've had during your committee meetings on topics such as mask mandates, issues with equity education, rights for LGBTQ and BIPOC students. Parents just want a voice. It's our job to listen to the voice. And if someone comes before us, and we've had many people come before us in the past with opinions that aren't necessarily something we agree with, but we listen and we take that feedback into account, and it's part of our decision-making process. It's our job to embrace the community, embrace parents, and understand their position, because that is our guidance. That is what moves us forward. They are taxpayers. They fund us. We want to make sure they're included in this process and not ostracized. We do better with partners than adversaries. We don't need to be fighting. So for RIASC to go forward and wholeheartedly embrace this, even after the NSBA has issued an apology letter, RIASC has been silent. There's 3 H's involved here. Hubris. I believe that Mr. Duffy and RIASC is overstepping their bounds and overstepping their mission. Honesty. I think the officers and the board of directors of RIASC need to make an honest attempt to right the ship and turn RIASC into the advocacy organization for education that it needs to be, and get out of partisan politics, get out of demonizing parents, and humility. I'd like an apology. Until those things happen, I fully support this resolution to withhold any of our dues payments to RIASC until these issues are corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Murray?
So I appreciate Member Pearson bringing this to our attention. I am aware that this is a resolution that's been floating around. It's a different school committees throughout the state. I think East Greenwich weighed in on this week. I actually didn't get information as to what their resolution was, what they ended up doing with it. I agree with many of the points that my fellow member makes. And, I don't condone some of the things that RIASC has done. Specifically, the director, Tim Duffy, has done, I think unilaterally on his own without consulting his own board. I think he's kind of run the ship for so long that, he's acting on his, sometimes his own opinions. And so I do think that school committees need to weigh in some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure. I think if the resolution was written specific from us to condone the specific activities and send a message to the leadership of RIASC that we're concerned, there's a bit of a due process issue here with me, is that I'm not hearing from the RIASC board or other membership on this issue, and if any corrective actions are being taken. I get that we want to send a message. I also know that RIASC has been a supportive organization in the past. And I'm not quick to just sever ties with partners on news media and Matt Allen show and other, things that have been said. I like people to actually explain themselves, and I afford them the ability to defend themselves and their actions, or at least just apologize and say this, say they're sorry and that they may have overstepped their authority, or quite frankly, step down when needed. Leadership hasn't stepped down in this case. I'm a little conflicted because I do feel that a message needs to be sent. I think that just saying we're going to hold back our dues because we're unhappy doesn't really explain to them. One, it doesn't get the due process because I haven't heard enough on this to really issue this sort of action. Two, if an action is needed, I think it needs to be very specific. What is our outcome? What are we looking for? And honestly, if it's executive leadership to step down, then we should state so. It's not, we're unhappy and we're going to hold back our dues until the executive leadership steps down. You'll no longer receive our dues. We'll no longer participate. If that's the action we want to take. So I'm a little hesitant on passing this resolution tonight because I think it's broad. I understand what it's meant to do, and these things float out when you have resolutions. You float them out to every school committee, just like you do with other legislation you want to promote. That's a little different because it's very general and you're kind of all working in the same direction. Again, with broad topic items like this, where you're not really presenting what your want is, unless it's just, I know it's, we want Rhode Island Association of School Committees to support open dialogue. I agree. We want people to weigh in and not be fearful that there's action against them. I agree. I will sit here and get yelled at all night long. I'm fine with that. This is the job I signed up for. And I would expect that RIASC would understand that and support that. I do think the executive leadership overstepped their bounds. But again, I think we need to be specific in what we're asking for them to do to get back in our good graces. So I'm not sure I can support this tonight, but I'm open for the further dialogue at the next meeting if more specific resolution is drafted and we have some more information.
Well, I completely agree with Member Pearson. And what really bothers me is RIASC allegedly pledged support for a particular candidate in a recall election. Calling for federal assistance regarding threats and disruptive events occurring at school board meetings across the nation. That may be across the nation, but I haven't seen anyone actually stop a school board meeting. I'm willing to let people yell at me, and they have in the past, and vent their anger about what's happening. I have no issue with that. And I don't think RIASC should either. If I don't have an issue, or we don't have an issue in Coventry, why would they have an issue? And why are they telling us that they're going to call in the FBI and they're going to investigate people and have federal law enforcement here? to adversely engage with our constituents. But I also agree with Mr. Murray. I think before we support this school committee resolution, Mr. Anderson should review this, and I'd like Mr. Anderson to be here so he can explain what Mr. Pearson has said and what is actually happening, because he's our attorney. He's the one who represents several local school committees in the state, and he would have a handle on this more than I think I would. But I hope, Mr. Pearson, you're not adverse to that. I think our lawyers should go through this. I think he should address this. And I agree with you totally on limiting our constituents to comments made to the school committee. And that's why we were elected. We're elected to take the heat. When, and Mr. Levis, you get yelled at all the time.
Can I just make a suggestion? Obviously, this
Yes,
is a
sir.
school committee matter, but I'm just, from what I'm hearing tonight, and again, it's your decision, the three committee members, but we have a meeting next Thursday. There may be a way to do some revisions of this, or you can vote on it tonight, but if you vote on it tonight, that's your prerogative too. But those are, I think, our two options. You vote on it as is, or we come back next week with some revisions. But again, the other part is, and I know Ms. Colonian's not here, but
Okay.
she's here next week, but that's your decision. It's not mine. I'm just summarizing what I've heard tonight. So I think there's a strong opinion from one member that this is the resolution. There's another suggestion of maybe being more specific in some areas. So
I would just, if I may, ask Member Pearson, are you amenable to that? Bring it back with some more specific language, I guess, to be clear on the direction to the superintendent and Attorney Anderson, on what we're looking for. So this has broad, concerns around governance, leadership, transparency, and failure to embrace nonpartisanship. We are aware of numerous complaints about these issues that have gone unanswered due to the fact that we have not seen the changes in operational method we would have expected. So what changes are we looking for? Changes in leadership, changes in an apology? What specifically? Because
Well, Mr. Pearson, you sound.
and
like
I'm
you're very
asking to
specific.
just give direction on a proposed resolution. That's all. I just want to be clear.
I'm waiting for a quiet moment so I can
Sorry.
speak if I'm allowed.
Yes.
I don't know if Mr. Anderson can contribute to this. This isn't really a legal document. This is really a resolution saying we're going to withhold some budget. It's a budgetary action, withhold dues based on what we want. The two action items in here that we're asking for, I think, are clearly stated to me. It's we are looking for changes in their operational method, a plan and timeline to accomplish those changes. And the changes we're looking for are, changes in their governance, leadership, and transparency to embrace nonpartisanship and not target parents this way. I guess you could rework that paragraph, but to me, it's clear. I'm in favor of moving on this tonight, and if it doesn't pass, so be it.
Mr. Pearson, would you be adverse to holding off on this until Mrs. Coolian's here next week?
First of all, I don't know if Mrs. Colonian will be here next week. I think her vacation was longer than a week. Second of all, I'm not sure if I can, I don't think next meeting would be appropriate for this.
I sorry to speak again, but I feel hesitancy on tonight, to be honest. I need to get a little more educated beyond what I hear I read on Mr. Google and, I'd like to reach out to Ryask and get a better, this is a pretty hard action with an organization that we're supposed to be in lockstep with legislation, with support, et cetera. We break ties. It better be good for a good reason. I understand you've laid out some good reasons. And they're all true. I'm not the most educated, maybe I should be, on the issue tonight because this, came down. This has all come down pretty quick. If you can't wait till next week, I'm willing to consider it next week as is, but if it can't come down till next week, I can't support it.
Okay. I agree with Mr. Murray, Mr. Pearson. We've been with Ryask a long time, and we know Mr. Murray. And I just need more time. Seriously, I need more time to think about this and determine if, because I agree with you. I agree with you entirely on what I've read in here. But at the same time, I just need more time to think about it. And possibly Mrs. Cooley may be here, so we'd have another person and another opinion on what to do on this. So I have a motion to approve the Coventry School Committee to issue a formal response to recent activity of the Rhode Island Association of School Committees. Mrs. Martin, would you? Okay, it needs to be seconded.
Second.
Mr. Pearson seconds it. Okay, can you call the names?
David Florio,
No.
Luke Murray,
No.
James Pearson.
Yes.
This one on you, right? All right. The next agenda item is the superintendent's report. Mr. Levis.
So I promise I will be brief tonight. So COVID-19, first I want to thank everybody. We had over 300 individuals last night go to the vaccine clinic. People were able to get their Moderna booster, their Pfizer booster, and several individuals also got their first vaccinations. And I want to thank our staff, numerous staff members, many of our teaching assistants, our clerks, educators, our students, our health career students. We had 4 of them help out, which was amazing. And I'm going to thank, Miss Martin, Mr. Martin, Mr. Cowart was there, and I'm probably missing other people, but I want to thank them. Again, it's just a great event. I also want to let you know that we're planning on a vaccination clinic for only for children ages 5 to 11. We're working out the dates right now with the Department of Health and the EMA. I took some feedback from our principals and from our school nurse teachers today. And the last information I have is they may be looking for November 19th, a Friday, and then December 10th. We'll have more information. We're going to definitely try to reach out to our elementary staff to support. I think students and families would love to see, friendly face. And so anyways, I'll keep you posted on that. And next week, I believe next school committee meeting, I didn't talk to Mrs. Maycumber today, but I did talk to her yesterday. But I think we'll be able to come forward with a plan that'll get our high school students back in. We're going to make some modifications and some, there's some work that has to be done But we should have a plan before you next Thursday night. And if I have it ahead of that time, I'll share it with you. But we've said all along this was a temporary. We do have some concerns. I still have concerns that a large percentage of our high school students are not vaccinated. I don't have that number yet. I've reached out to Rido to ask for that number. The last number I have is from August, late August, and that was 54, I think, 0.1% at the high school were vaccinated, and I think of eligible students, and 45% at the middle school for eligible students. So we know that more have been vaccinated, but I don't have those numbers. So anyways, I'll share that with you. And then finally, we have hired a COVID nurse. Her name is Brianna Straczynski. We're still trying to put together our testing team, but she's been all to every building, met with all of our school nurse teachers. And so we're excited to have her on board, but we will also be hopefully setting up testing that'll take place, with consent in all of our buildings. And I'm sure you heard that the Westerly is starting the Test This Day pilot program. It's very labor intensive. They're getting a lot of support to do it for a month. We'll take a look at what their results are and what that would look like for Coventry, but it only makes a difference if people agree and give consent to it. And we saw last year, we didn't have a high consent rate in terms of testing. But it's something we'll look at and we'll assess. So that's an update on COVID. I think we did talk last time about some, how the quarantine has been reduced, and also they've made some changes on busing that's going to keep more kids in school. Recess, we're not even considering recess, which was a big issue for us early on because it's hard to track. So we're putting a lot of kids out. Now we're not even considering recess as part of the contact tracing. So we're taking steps to try to keep as many students in school. I believe, and that's what our Department of Health has put forward, is that, we continue to hold as many vaccination clinics as we can as possible, as this community wants. And people were so grateful. There were many senior citizens, many elderly people that were so appreciative. People were so helpful, directing them, taking care of them, helping them register. So that I want to thank. And then the last part is a performance audit. I met with the town manager. We meet every Wednesday. I met with him Wednesday, and my concern was about the performance audit, that we haven't heard anything. And he said he actually hadn't heard. He was kind of surprised, but he did reach out. He sent me an email Wednesday afternoon, which said that I think it's Pennington, Mr. Pennington was going to reach out to me and speak with me. And then he wanted to pull together a steering committee meeting virtual on Monday, August 8th at like 3 p.m. So, my plan is to have more of a discussion. I'll make some recommendations around the steering committee, but I still have concerns about, I think there seems to be, they want this done. And I think we want it done right. And so until I have a conversation with them, which I'm fortunate, we do have a school committee meeting next Thursday night, but, I want to know how they're going to do this work. Because, it looks like at one point they were talking about setting up interviews with department heads and things like that during a week. Well, it's going to take a lot more than a week to get to the information. I mean, especially when they had indicated, and like I said, I think I wrote to the committee, I thought he was very honorable, and I think he'll do a fair job by us, but it indicated that they haven't done this work because most schools don't ask for this type of comprehensive work. They ask for maybe looking at our transportation contract or looking at one aspect of an educational system. We want them to look at multiple aspects and where there's efficiencies. So anyways, I'm just concerned about how we're going to ramp this process up to be effective, but I'll have more information for you once I speak to Mr. Pennington. And we do have a meeting next Thursday, so I'll bring more to you, and I can also share to you any information that comes forward in the meantime through, I'll share that with you through email. So those are just the two updates that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Anything from the committee from Mr. Levis? Mr. Pearson?
Thank you for the update. I'll just make one point, and I understand our position where we want an audit that's done correctly. And so, of course, we need to advocate for our position. I think we also just need to be cautious with our tone. I think if we're questioning the process too much publicly at this point without it even really getting underway yet, community members might see that as we're being obstructive or oppositional, and I don't think we are. So that's my only observation. Just, the bid's been won, the vendor's been paid, and the work is being done. So it's our job to make sure the work gets done correctly and efficiently as we can. And if there's a barrier to getting that done, I think that needs to be brought before us. That's all. Thank you.
No, thanks for those points. I agree 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Anybody else? We're all good. Anything from the public on Mr. Levis's report? Seeing none, we can go to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments from the gathered citizens? Seeing none, I think we can move to schedule our next meeting. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to schedule the next meeting for November 4, 2021 at the Coventry Resource and Senior Center at 6 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to our adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn at 9:30 p.m.?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 9:30 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you all for your attendance. Very good. All right.